For a decade, inside the world's most secretive company, a revolution was brewing. Apple, the titan that gave us the Mac, iPod, and iPhone, was quietly spending billions of dollars to create its next world-changing product. And no, it wasn't a phone or a computer. It was a car. Project Titan, as it was called, was Apple's moonshot, an electric, fully autonomous vehicle meant to completely upend the auto industry. At its peak, the project pulled in nearly 5,000 of the world's brightest minds. Then, in early 2024, after 10 years and a staggering amount of cash, Apple did the unthinkable. They killed it. In a shockingly brief meeting, the entire project was shut down and all work came to a halt. So what on earth happened? How could the world's most valuable company, with its legendary design and bottomless resources, fail so spectacularly? This wasn't just a change of plans, it was a colossal failure. It's a story of unchecked ambition, internal warfare, and a brutal collision with reality. Let's break down the 5 shocking reasons Apple's dream car crashed and burned before it ever hit the road. The first reason Project Titan was in trouble from the get-go was its own breathtaking ambition. Apple didn't just want to build an EV to compete with Tesla. That would have been too easy. From day one, the goal was something straight out of science fiction. A Level 5 autonomous vehicle. Think about that for a second. A car with no steering wheel and no pedals. An interior designed like a plush, private lounge. You'd just tell it where to go, using an advanced version of Siri, of course, and then sit back, relax, or watch a movie. It wasn't a car. It was a smart device on wheels. But that incredible vision was also its fatal flaw. Apple was essentially trying to skip all the early iPhone models and jump straight to the iPhone X. Level 5 autonomy, where a car can drive itself anywhere, in any condition, is still the holy grail of the auto world. No one is even close to achieving it safely. Yet Apple, a company with zero experience making cars, thought it could solve one of the hardest engineering challenges on the planet from a standing start. The hurdles proved way bigger than expected. Let's be honest, Siri still sometimes struggles with basic commands on an iPhone. The idea it could flawlessly navigate a chaotic city was a huge leap of faith. The prototypes were a far cry from the sleek, futuristic pod executives dreamed of. Apple's obsession with launching a perfect, revolutionary product meant it was chasing a horizon that kept moving further away. They bet the farm on a breakthrough that never came, and by the time they considered scaling back to a more realistic Level 2 system, like Tesla's autopilot, they'd already burned through billions chasing an impossible dream. While engineers were battling the laws of physics, an even bigger fight was happening inside Apple's offices. One source close to the project bluntly called it an incredible failure of leadership, where constant infighting and a lack of a clear vision paralyzed the entire team. From the very beginning, Apple's top brass couldn't even agree on what the car should be. Was it a semi-autonomous car to take on Tesla, or the fully autonomous pod with no steering wheel? This basic disagreement created a tug-of-war that ripped the project in two. Leadership became a revolving door. Executives poached from Tesla, BMW, and Ford would arrive with high hopes, only to quit in frustration a few years later, tangled in a mess of internal politics. With every new leader came a new vision. The project was rebooted over and over again. One year they were building the whole car. The next, they pivoted to just making self-driving software for other car makers. Then it swung right back to building the car again. This whiplash led to confusion, wasted work, and a total loss of momentum. Imagine working for years on a design, only to be told the strategy has changed and your work is now useless. Morale hit rock bottom. Hundreds of employees were laid off in multiple reshuffles, while others left for competitors that actually had a plan. Unlike the iPhone, which was guided by the singular, uncompromising vision of Steve Jobs, Project Titan had no conductor. It was a chaotic orchestra of brilliant people all playing different songs. This internal chaos wasn't just a distraction. It was the core reason the project never, ever found its footing. Alright, let's talk about the money. Apple is a machine built to do one thing better than anyone in history: generate obscene profits. The iPhone, AirPods, the Apple Watch. These aren't just amazing products, they're high-margin masterpieces. The Apple Car, however, ran headfirst into an economic reality the company just couldn't stomach. The car was rumoured to have a price tag of around $100,000. But here's the kicker. Even at that sky-high price, the profit margins were expected to be razor-thin compared to what Apple is used to. The car business is notoriously tough. It's a world of complex supply chains, massive factory costs, and brutal competition. For every dollar a car company makes, it's lucky to keep a few cents in profit. Apple, on the other hand, is used to keeping a huge chunk of every dollar. Forcing itself into a low-margin business just didn't make sense. It would have been a massive drain on resources for a product that would barely move the needle on its bottom line. And what would you really be getting for that $100,000? Apple's software? Most drivers already have that with Apple CarPlay, which delivers the core Apple experience in cars that cost a fraction of the price. Without a truly game-changing feature like Level 5 self-driving, there was very little reason for customers to pay a huge premium for an Apple logo. The company that mastered the art of selling premium products found itself stuck. The car was simply too expensive for the value it offered, and not nearly profitable enough for a company like Apple. Let's be clear, Apple is the master of consumer electronics. They design beautiful objects and manage colossal supply chains to build hundreds of millions of them. But that success may have led to a bit of hubris, a belief that the same formula could easily conquer the auto industry. They were wrong. Building a car, as it turns out, is a whole lot harder than building an iPhone. Apple completely underestimated the brutal world of automotive manufacturing. A car has tens of thousands of parts from hundreds of suppliers that all have to work perfectly in extreme heat, freezing cold, and violent collisions for over a decade. The safety regulations alone are a nightmare. It's a universe away from the 2-year upgrade cycle of a smartphone. To get around its inexperience, Apple tried to partner with established automakers. They held talks with BMW, Hyundai, and Mercedes-Benz, hoping to use someone else's factory and expertise. But every single deal fell through. Why? Because Apple wanted total control. They wanted it to be an Apple product, which meant dictating the design and, more importantly, owning all the customer data. The car makers looked at the deal and, not surprisingly, had no interest in becoming a glorified factory for a tech giant. That left Apple facing the monumental task of building a car from scratch. They were a novice in an industry of 100-year-old giants, from sourcing steel to setting up a service network for repairs. Apple was out of its depth. The tech titan that could command the world's attention with a single keynote was humbled by the unforgiving reality of making cars. So you've got impossible tech, internal chaos, and a broken business model. But what do you think was the final nail in the coffin? And be honest, if Apple had released a $100,000 car, would you have actually considered it? Let me know down in the comments. And if you're enjoying this deep dive, hit that subscribe button. It helps a ton. The final nail in Project Titan's coffin was perhaps the most practical. The world changed, and Apple made a cold, strategic pivot. When the project kicked off back in 2014, the future seemed inevitable. It would be electric and autonomous. Silicon Valley was buzzing, and investors were throwing money at anything with wheels and a battery. A decade later, that hype has cooled significantly. The transition to EVs has been slower than predicted, bogged down by worries about charging, range, and high prices. Even legacy automakers are tapping the brakes on their big EV plans. At the same time, the dream of full autonomy has been hit with a massive reality check. As experts now admit, it's a far harder problem than anyone imagined. In this new climate, Apple's car project looked less like a revolution and more like a high-risk, low-reward money pit. Meanwhile, another tech revolution was exploding: generative AI. Companies like Microsoft and Google were making huge leaps in AI, and for the first time in a while, Apple was seen as lagging behind. Apple's leadership looked at the board and made a tough call. Why keep pouring billions into a car with an uncertain future and tiny profits when the next great tech battle was in AI? The decision was made. In early 2024, they cancelled the car and immediately moved many of the project's remaining employees over to the company's generative AI division. It was a clear signal that the car was a dead end, and Apple's future would be defined by intelligence and software, not heavy metal. So what's the big takeaway from the decade-long saga of the Apple car? The failure of Project Titan wasn't one thing, but a cascade of failures. It was a story of technological hubris, where ambition raced far ahead of reality. It was a textbook case of failed leadership, where a decade of chaos stemmed from the lack of a single, unified vision. And it was a fundamental clash between Apple's high-margin world and the gritty, low-margin reality of making cars. In the end, after spending billions of dollars, Apple did something it rarely does. It admitted defeat. It decided the massive risks of entering the car market just weren't worth the reward. Instead of chasing Tesla, Apple is now chasing OpenAI and Google, redirecting its immense power toward the AI race. The dream of the iCar is officially dead. It will go down as one of the most ambitious and expensive projects Apple ever attempted, and a powerful cautionary tale that even for the most powerful company in the world, some mountains are just too high to climb.